Okay, welcome back to Introductory Sociology. If you haven't signed the attendance log, you want to do that and pick up your quiz from last week. So I'm going to talk a little bit about scholarly sources, and this is not so relevant to you all because you don't have to use them, although it would be helpful in some cases if you did. This is more geared towards my online class, and they'll hopefully watch this. Basically, a scholarly source is one that's published or written by a university professor, and it's peer-reviewed. In other words, if I were to submit an article to a scholarly journal, it's going to go out to at least 5 reviewers, and they're probably not going to like it and tell me to change things and make it better. When it's up to the level of being publishable, then you know it's a good article. Now, things that are not scholarly sources, encyclopedias, internet pages, what are some other newspaper articles, just random books that you might get in the library, although there are books that are in fact peer-reviewed. But here's how you find a scholarly source. You log on, let me see, don't want to do that. So you log on to the CCC's library, and there are various databases like EBSCOhost and ProQuest, and I logged on to ProQuest. So I think EBSCOhost is a little bit different. There's a button that says Limit My Search to Scholarly Sources. Here on ProQuest, you're going to click that button that says Peer Reviewed. So what would be, and then you search, what should I search for? What kind of?
We'll talk about gender inequality.
Okay. Gender and equality. So I can limit it to articles that were recently published, and I can narrow down this search. But what you get here is scholarly sources. And so if I click on that, one way that you can tell it's a scholarly source is it always has an abstract at the beginning. The abstract is a short summary of what the article was about and what they found, and it's always going to include 3 things. One is, what was the research topic? What was the method of analysis? And what were the main findings? And that's a good thing to read because you don't have to read the whole article to know if it might be useful or relevant to your own research. But also another thing, this is more for my online class, but for you all as well. I'm not a big stickler for APA or MLA citation methods. I don't mind what you use, but I have to know where it came from. On my online class, I'm getting a lot of very odd citation. It says citation and it's in blue, but it just says citation. It doesn't tell me where exactly the source came from. Or sometimes people write the internet, as their source, but that doesn't help me because I won't know where it came from because the internet, there's a lot of things you could possibly get off the internet. So you want to make sure that it's possible for your instructor to actually know where the source came from. If you're taking an English class, hopefully they're teaching about that, but you need to know what is a scholarly source. So with that said, just another side comment. In my PowerPoint, at the end, there's a little bit of material about age. We're not going to talk about that because it's omitted in your recent textbook. So we're going to talk about gender today. And gender refers to the socially expected behaviors that we ascribe to people based on their sex, male or female. And it's not totally the same in all cultures. So how to be appropriately masculine or appropriately feminine would be a little bit different in Japan. Like I mentioned, a small point, in Japan, ladies, when they laugh in public, are expected to cover their mouth lightly. Not like that, but just lightly, if you don't cover your mouth when laughing in public, you're acting masculine. We don't have that at all in America, but there will be differences. And gender will exist along a continuum. So we have hyper-masculinity and then hyper-femininity, and very few people are at one end of the continuum. Because if we had to make a list, say, of what is masculine, we could talk about body attributes or interest or hobbies. Like when you think of a guy who's masculine, what does he look like?
Strong.
Strong? Tall? Big? And what are some of his interests? I mean, we'll talk about the gender stereotypes, being mechanical and rational and so forth. And then when we think about women, we could describe what it means to be very feminine. But the point is, very few people perfectly match one end of the continuum. For example, if we are going to put something together in my home, something that requires assembly, say the last thing I did was an exercise bike. My wife knows how to put things together and doesn't screw up, and I always screw up. I'm just not that, what do you call it, spatial reasoning, whatever. I mean, that's her thing. She's really good at that. And there's nothing wrong with that. And on the other hand, my daughter likes to do outside work, like with a drill and screw and fixing a fence. My sons aren't really that fond of it. So we're going to see these differences. And you can see in this short video clip kind of what I'm talking about with gender role expectations. The idea here, we're not born with it. I used to prank on my younger son when he was about 5 or 6 and asked on Halloween if he wanted to dress as a Princess Fairy. And I had showed him the costume, in Walmart, and he would consider it. He's thinking, should I be Darth Maul or a Princess Fairy? And then his older brother would say, get rid of that pink tutu. You can't dress like that. Because initially, he didn't really have that sense. But the idea, though, is that we learn it. Like when I was young, I was growing up, and the only neighbors we had at the time were Angela and April Bailey. So that's who we played with, my brother and I. And we tried to get them to play cops and robbers and cowboys and Indians, but they ended up converting us to playing with dolls, and having tea parties. And I actually started enjoying it so much that I asked Angie if I could take her doll home. It was kind of a tall one. So I'm sitting there, it must have been about 5 or 6 o'clock, and my dad walks in, and I'm playing with a doll, and he said, what the hell is that? And I said, it's a doll, and I'm having tea parties, and I'm enjoying it. And there was a big argument between my father and my mother, but it all settled down. They said, you will never, ever go play with Angie and April. And that was just cut off. And I always wondered whatever became of them, but that's kind of a parental reaction. And it seems extreme, but what would you do if you had a 8-year-old boy that was really getting into dolls and tea parties and dress up too? Would you let him do it? Yeah. Would anyone put a stop to that? Tell him to play with Tonka trucks instead? No. But that's the point. And you can see. Let me see. Do you want to change the color scheme? It's going to keep asking me that. I'm going to have to answer it. All right. Well, let's talk a little bit about the video here, because the video kind of depicts this. What would you do if a little boy or a little girl wanted to dress in a gender inappropriate way for Halloween?
With Halloween just 12 days away, kids everywhere are in a frenzy to find just the right costume. The perfect day to set up shop at the Spirit Halloween Superstore in Staten Island, New York. Ready to trick and treat. We cast Diana and 7-year-old Quentin as mom and son out shopping for costumes. Sounds like fun.
Who do you want to be? Spider-Man?
Except for one problem.
Do you want to be Hulk?
I don't want to be this.
What do you want to be then?
I want to be Belle.
No, you're not wearing that.
Our hidden cameras are all set.
Hi, Robert.
And we settle in to find out whether customers will side with mom or son.
Please, Mom, I really want to be a princess.
You can't be a princess.
No, Mom, I want this. Please.
No. You don't understand what's wrong with wearing that. Girls wear princess costumes, not boys.
This mother is listening closely,
Please.
even while trying to keep an eye on her own kids.
No.
And she can't help but notice.
You want to try on the Spider-Man?
No.
Turns out she's been there.
I have 3 boys, and that's my older one did that. But I'm like you, I told you no.
You told him no?
I know, he can't be. It was just that one time, and then it never.
Was it a phase?
Yeah.
All right.
As the mothers bond, Quentin decides he's going to show them exactly what he wants.
Look, This is why I want to be. I'm taking over.
No, you're not.
What do you think?
I think that you can't really wear a princess costume. I know you like it, but that's for a girl. And you're not a girl, right?
And yet our mom is still concerned.
What if it's not a phase?
What are you gonna do? He's your son. I mean,
I feel like I should stop it now.
I know. Don't get me wrong. I don't think you should get a princess.
You shouldn't be a princess.
No, I agree totally 100% with you.
100%. It sounds like Quentin is not going to get his way. Enter this next woman who's so worried about bullies that she works overtime in her own game of persuasion.
What about Spider-Man?
I don't like Spider-Man. Or cops. I don't like being cops.
Army?
No, war's bad.
Like a ninja?
I don't like ninjas. They fight.
Oh, okay, so you don't want to fight. Okay.
What about John Quinones? Hi, I'm John Quinones. We're actors.
Oh my God! I agree that he shouldn't, just because kids are cruel. I didn't want him to get picked on in school. That's all.
What if your daughter wanted a male outfit like Spider-Man?
Well, it's funny because they make those outfits into girls now. It's a little less of a, the stigma, yeah.
We wonder if she's right, so we decide to switch things up. Now it's a girl who wants to be.
Spider-Man. I really want to be Spider-Man. Come on, he's so cool.
How do we look over the costumes, huh?
This mother and daughter walk in and right away notice Jolie's choice of costume.
Look, Spider-Man is so much cooler than Belle.
That's a boy costume.
Doesn't matter if it's a boy costume.
She seems to be searching for alternatives. And then
Maybe she wanted to be like a disco type movie, like disco?
Yeah, but I like to be Spider-Man.
How old is she?
9.
but what is she really curious about?
Was she like this all the time? Because if she was, then it's going to be hard to break it out. If it just started, you have to do it now, get a hold of it, make her more into the girl.
Stop it now.
After a quick change, Jolie is back.
What do you think? Isn't it cool?
She put it on already. Oh,
But is the costume convincing?
What do you think?
It looks
I would like you better in a little dress, honestly. I think you would look so much prettier in a dress.
Come on, he's so cool.
I know, sweetheart, but Spider-Man is only for one time. A princess, you can be 24 hours of the day.
Tough day. So far, everyone has sided with our mother.
I have to agree with Mommy on this one.
Why is that wrong?
That's... How do you explain it? Like the girl with the Power Ranger.
Even a few children.
How do you like this one? Oh, that's for girls. That's for girls.
That's for girls.
So we decide to roll one last time. And in walks Sally Rahman for a little window shopping with her friend.
I'm trying to figure something out. My daughter wants to wear a Spider-Man costume.
Oh, really? You could be the female Spider-Man.
Spider-Woman?
Spider-Woman, yes. We need a Spider-Woman.
It sounds like they're trying to find a compromise. But then,
I'm a little more concerned about it. I just want to nip it in the bud right now. Tear her hair a bit.
nip it in the bud. Now Sally really has to say something.
What encourages her to do Spider-Man is that she likes the feeling of saving people. It shows that she wants to be a strong woman.
Jolie is back once again.
Whoa! You like it?
Isn't this awesome?
It is. You look like a strong girl.
I'm gonna walk away for a minute, okay?
As Diana walks away, the therapy session turns toward Jolie.
Do you think that I should feel bad about liking boy stuff?
Let me tell you something. I'm just worried that other people won't accept you. But if you are strong and you know who you are and you know what you want, people will respect you for it.
But what if she doesn't turn around?
But know that there are more girls like you. Right now, mommy's just worried that you won't take advantage of your beauty.
Can you stay with me until my mama comes back?
Yeah, absolutely. Are you kidding me? I wouldn't leave you.
It's the most touching reaction of the day from a strong and incredibly compassionate young woman.
some customers say to her, don't do it. You didn't.
No.
Why not?
You want people to start being more open-minded, and I just saw the way she, was so worried about her kids turning gay, even though she didn't literally say the word gay.
If he or she does.
Yeah. I mean, either way, they're still your child. And unfortunately, there's a lot of people that turn their back on them just because of their sexual orientation, and that's something that, breaks my heart.
So, but what were your reactions to that? If you had a 8-year-old son who wanted to dress as Belle, the yellow costume, would you be okay letting him dress up that way?
I would.
You would?
I would tell them to.
Yeah. Anyone not want? Would anyone not do it?
I would.
You wouldn't? You wouldn't? You tell him he can't dress up as Belle, and
Well, it has to do more with my religion than trying to stifle his personality.
right. So you just feel like it's not a thing that would match or fit with your beliefs. What about you, Orion?
I don't hear it,
You're not sure?
yeah, I don't think I'd let him.
Yeah. So, gender discrimination, though, is based on sex, and that's the distinction between men and women. I'm going to just double check here. I'm doing good with, okay, good. So, I hate to redo recordings. So, gender then is the social expectations for how you would behave. And so then there's a difference between sex and gender. Sex refers to the anatomy that we have, the physical anatomy, whereas gender refers to the social expectations for how we ought to act according to our sex. So the idea then is that when we're born, we don't really have a solid sense of gender. We learn it growing up by modeling our parents and older adults and siblings that we observe. So it's acquired through socialization. We'll talk more about that as we proceed. The point is, early on, parents stress the characteristics and behaviors that fit the ideal image for male and female. Even, say you're having a baby, how is it the room is different depending on the gender? Colors and toy.
Themes.
Yeah. I mean, if I don't buy the Happy Meals anymore, but I remember back when the kids were getting Happy Meals, my daughter said she always wanted the boy toys because they do more things. They're I don't know what does anyone buy Happy Meals? Have you noticed there's a difference between the boy and the girl toys? Yeah. So gender refers to the socially learned behavior, and becoming a man or a woman is a cultural process. So, of course, there are biological differences and that have little to do with socialization, and there's some argument that women or men's brains are different, but it's still speculative. And we know women live longer regardless of the culture, so there are some differences. But as far as the behaviors and expectations go, the idea is that it's taught. So cross-cultural evidence shows this to be true. In some cultures, men have been taught to be more cooperative and and unaggressive, and they live up to those expectations. In some cultures, women are socialized to be more aggressive or more competitive, or they don't have the hang-ups about careers. Like in the U.S., about less than 1% of computer science majors are women. And it's a little bit better in engineering, but there are certain occupations that we sort of associate with being masculine or feminine. Like, and it's unfortunate because take auto mechanics. Anyone know how many? I doubt there are many women majoring in auto mechanics here at CCC or anywhere. But you can look at other cultures and you'll see differences like heavy equipment operators, bulldozers and stuff. In Scandinavian countries, women are much more likely to be doing that kind of thing. And so you can see cross-cultural evidence that, as far as occupations go, that in other cultures, like China, for example, women are more likely to be in math and science. Now, gender roles have changed in society, and when they do change, men and women tend to comply. And so, it's been a long time since I've been in high school, but when I was in high school, it was primarily, if there was going to be a date or prom or a dance, it was pretty much always the guy who asks the girl out, and now what percentage is it, if you had to think? Like, what percent of the time do you think the women ask guys out to prom? 10%? I don't know.
It's still not very likely,
It's not-
but, you know.
Yeah. But the idea then about what it means to be manly, if you, and it's hard sometimes to think about this, but think about your grandparents. For example, they're deceased now, but both of my grandmothers had this idea that if you're a woman, you should know how to cook. And I mean, not with a cook, but you just know a lot of things, and that's sort of a responsibility. And my grandparents, I mean, she could make so many dishes without looking in a book or looking on the internet, and now we're seeing changes. It's not such a big deal that we don't expect that women are really good cooks as much as we used to. Any other differences? If you think about, say, your grandfather, how is his sense of masculinity different than what we have now?
They were tougher.
What's that?
They were tougher back then.
They were tougher? Yeah. My grandfather, well, it may be more likely to hold the door open for women and so on. So the idea is we acquire this through socialization. Functionalists would say that gender differences are functional. For early on in a hunting and gathering society, men primarily hunted and women took care of children, and it made sense because of that society at that time. But they would say nowadays, gender inequality is generally dysfunctional. And by inequality, we're talking things like the gender pay gap. Women get paid less money even when they're doing the same job. Initial placement from say, a university program, they start at a lower salary. And so, of course, part of that is lowballing yourself. In a professional career, salary is negotiable. They'll often ask, if we hire you, what would you expect to be paid? Studies have shown women tend to underestimate, to say they'll work for less, whereas men are more prone to give a little bit higher. And so, just some advice. Say you just graduated with a degree in computer science, and you're doing an interview, and they say, how much would you be expected to be paid if we hire you? Make sure you know the going rate. What's average for that field, and go a little bit on the high side, because they're not going to quibble over $1,000 or $2,000 if they really want you, if they want to hire you. So functionalists would say the inequality is dysfunctional. The conflict perspective would say that men use their power and privileges to maintain their power, and they exploit women economically. For example, in World War II, pretty much all of the domestic flights, airplanes, were flown by females. Dumb question, but why do you think that was? The men were mostly at war, and they did a fine job. But when they came back, the women pretty much were pushed out of that occupation. And I don't fly a lot, but I've never seen a head pilot as a woman. Has anyone ever flown on a plane where the pilot was female? No. So they'd be critical of this, and they would say that subordination of women is a key component in maintaining a capitalist society. And so the conflict perspective would push for more equality. And of course, as far as pay goes, we'll talk about that later, but there was an attempt to amend the Constitution in the 70s to guarantee women equal rights, and it failed to be passed by the majority of the states. Sexual harassment is also an issue of power, and there's really a big gender disconnect here. Probably none of you are old enough to remember the Clarence Thomas hearings. He's a current Supreme Court justice. Anyway, he was accused by a former aide, Anita Thomas Hill, of sexual harassment, and she gave very detailed testimony, and he denied it all. Studies and surveys found that men believed Clarence Thomas. They thought it was all lies, and women tended to believe much of what she had said, because there's sort of here's a funny sort of a story. My roommate, John, in college, I remember we were in a sociology class talking about gender and discrimination and sexual harassment, and he raised his hand and he said, I don't understand this whole thing about sexual harassment. I'd love to be harassed. he worked at the Cub, student union building. He said, my boss is hot. That's how he put it. And so his thought of like harassment is someone that he had no chance with, out of his league, really attractive woman, all of a sudden now is hitting on him, and so he said, I'm all for that. But that, of course, what's wrong with that definition? What is the key with sexual harassment?
It's not consensual.
It's not consensual. What he was describing is his flirting fantasy, I suppose you would say, but it wasn't. What he described wouldn't qualify as sexual harassment. And one of the problems is that proving it. A lot of women just end up quitting the job and going somewhere else where they don't experience this problem. And there's generally two forms of harassment. One is a hostile work environment, where, for example, you did an excellent report and you hand it into your boss, and your boss, instead of complimenting you on your report, says you have a nice butt or something like that, and it's uncomfortable, or it could be just what people are saying. And then there's quid pro quo. That's less common, but basically what happens is somebody higher up says that in order for you to get promoted or get a raise or to maybe get more overtime, you have to perform some sexual favors, and that, of course, needs to stop. And then in the military recently, I haven't followed it too closely, but have you seen this scandal in the Marine Corps where the Marines are posting photos of, anyone seen that? Posting their, basically, I don't know how they obtained it because I didn't read too carefully, but naked photos or revealing photos of women who are in the Marine Corps. You can check it in the news, but that, of course, would be a case of sexual harassment. And as an aside, one of the stupidest things that young people sometimes do is share images electronically, because you don't know. I always tell I had a problem with my daughter once about that. I said, just don't send people pictures, because you don't know what's going to happen with that. But it's more common with the internet. Do you think it's common nowadays that not only men but women just send out pictures and not thinking about the young people? Yeah, so that, of course, can be a problem. Now, the symbolic interaction perspective would talk about gender socialization. It's the process in which boys learn to act the way they're supposed to act, and girls learn to act as they're expected to act. Now, there is, of course, I think you can take it too far. I'll give you one example. When I was in school, a classmate was really artistic. He drew beautiful paintings, and his father kept saying, that's what girls do or something. He had a talent. Why discourage it? Have you ever heard a parent tell a son to stop acting like a girl? When did they say that? When they're crying or whining. And so that's a negative statement as well, because being a whiner, a crier, etc., is sort of the stereotype. That's more what girls do. So the learning begins at birth, and I don't know, 2.5. I would say I'd up that. I say, when did you have a definite sense of being masculine or feminine? I can't remember, but it was probably 4 or 5. I had that sense. The methods parents use are quite common, like assigning boys masculine jobs or chores, and although it's maybe you could argue this, because, like I said, my daughter, she's almost 18. She's the one that likes outdoor, hands-on work, and I'm encouraging that. There's nothing wrong with that. But my wife has a tendency to say, fold the laundry and wash the dishes, whereas my son, Seika would like to split firewood. I don't do it anymore, but she loves splitting firewood and working outside, and whereas my boys are not that fond of it. So the idea then is that parents teach the gender. It begins at school, where girls are expected to be more on the quiet side and boys are talkative. There's peer pressure as well. That is, if you're a guy and you act very feminine, you'll get teased or hassled. I was a classmate with Doug Peterson, the current coach of the Philadelphia Eagles, and he was a pretty masculine guy. But I remember once he was listening to Boy George. It's the old group, but basically, like jocks don't really do that. Boy George, I guess it would be like listening to Justin Bieber all the time or something like that. So he got hassled a bit about it. So the idea, though, is if you think about it in high school, if there's a guy who acts very feminine most of the time, what happens?
He gets picked on.
Picked on, called names, and it's perhaps less so for women. I mean, if you're a woman and you dress and act very masculine, is the bullying or picking on less than in the case of? No, it's about the same. Yeah. So there's pressure then to conform. The media, in both print and visual, helps mold men and women to gender role expectations. And we'll talk more about that as we proceed. Some sex stereotypes. Men are expected to be virile, brave, aggressive, unemotional, more logical and mechanical, confident and competitive. They are supposed to not like losing compared to women. Women are expected to be more emotional, sentimental, modest, non-competitive, etc. And so, of course, not everybody perfectly lives up to these stereotypes. I mean, there are women who are very competitive, well, like this, for example. Let's see. What was that? I think it was UNM soccer. Pulls hair. Let's see if I can find it. Yeah, Elizabeth Lambert. So this kind of behavior, though, is outside of the expected norms.
Unsportsmanlike conduct is a universal penalty. It applies to every sport on every level, and you know it when you see it. It's obvious when one player purposefully eye gouges another. It's debatable when a planned touchdown celebration is concocted. What is rare is when women athletes are involved in any of this type of behavior. That's what happened yesterday during a college soccer game in Provo, Utah. It's practically unbelievable. University of New Mexico junior defender Elizabeth Lambert has been suspended indefinitely for her actions in this match. It's the semifinals of the Mountain West Conference. You see her kind of getting caught up with Harley Payne and punches her in the back, and then she fights through Cassidy Shumway, knocks her to the ground here, and then Lambert takes Payne's legs out without touching the ball. And here she is with Shumway again getting tangled up on the ground, and then this one was the worst of them all. She pulls Shumway's ponytail and pulls her down to the ground, and this continued. Watch as Lambert goes after, on a hard challenger, trips a BYU player, and then the BYU player is on the ground, and you can see the ball is kicked into her face, what appears to be purposely. She received a yellow card there. The referees finally intervened. More rough stuff to see Lambert and Payne again. Hard challenge by the ball. A couple of punches are thrown in. BYU would win this game 1-0, and there's been a lot of attention, as you might imagine, to all of this, and thus Elizabeth Lambert released this statement today. I am deeply and wholeheartedly regretful for my actions. My actions were uncalled for. I let my emotions get the best of me in a heated situation. I take full responsibility for my actions and accept any punishment felt necessary from the coaching staff and you.
And it goes on, but like when I think about my daughter, when she first started playing soccer, there was a case where there was a contested ball, like she was trying to get the ball from someone else, and she said to the other team, to the player on the other team, you go ahead and you have the ball. And then the other player says, no, you take it. And so the parents are yelling. It's like, this isn't the time to be polite. I mean, you got to fight for that. And they couldn't both of these players were wanting to be humble and let the other one take the ball. But I mean, so you see this with gender. That the idea, though, is that it's more unacceptable for women to act in that way, as you saw in the video, compared to men. Now, and of course, some of this is arguably not a good idea, like discouraging women and men from doing things that aren't, quote, quote, masculine or feminine, when they may actually have a talent and be better at that is probably not a good thing. But think about when you were growing up, how many of you have a sibling of the opposite sex? Did your parents, how did your parents treat you differently in terms of chores and expectations? Did they make you fold all the laundry?
Yeah.
And
I had to clean dishes and make food, and my brother threw out the trash.
Yeah, trash. The boys did the trash.
yeah. Yeah, so there's sort of these expectations. And not all men or women perfectly adhere to all of these stereotypes. And if you think about like the stereotype of what kind of movies do women like, they're chick flicks, they're called. What's this, drama sort of a thing? But are there any? I'm sure there are women who would prefer like action. Any of you ladies like action movies better than drama? Yeah. So, or hobbies. I mean, it's thought that like going out hunting is sort of a guy thing, but there are women who are really into that. Now, consequences of the stereotypes, because both sexes tend to place a higher value on men than they do women. And there was a study actually where they distributed articles to university freshmen, and they were the same articles except in half of them the author was clearly female, like Ashley, so you couldn't, there aren't any guys named Ashley. And then in other cases it was a clearly male name. They were asked to rate and evaluate the quality of the article, and both men and women thought it was better written when they believed it was written by a man. Women are much more likely to suffer from generalized depression. If a man is sad, he usually could tell you exactly why, whereas in some cases it's for women it's just a whole bunch of things, and it's hard to narrow it down. Women are socialized to be the victims of learned helplessness, to somehow blame themselves, and one of the sad things, women who are victimized by domestic violence, it tends to be a pattern when they get rid of the current abuser, they end up in a somewhat similar relationship. And has anyone ever known that? Known a woman who got out of one bad relationship and the next one wasn't any much better? So yeah, that now men tend to die earlier from stress-related cardiovascular diseases because they're socialized to be tough and to try to, from the start, when if a little boy is crying too much, he's told to man up, and so you find that men, well, one thing, they delay going to the doctor, and two, they're more prone to doing things that are kind of stupid. I haven't watched the show Jackass. Has anyone seen that? I saw a clip once. Well, what do? They hurt themselves from reckless. Being reckless, and so you'll find that boys are more likely to get into trouble. Like, remember my oldest son, roof jumping. Is that climb up on roofs and try to jump, and then to attach a rope to the cart at Albertsons in the snow and then pull it with the truck? You ever done that? No, you've done that. Yeah. So did you get hurt? No. You lucked out. And so women are less prone to injury because they're not doing those kinds of stupid things as much. And men feel they're forced to prove themselves by winning and feel sad or inferior when they don't. I mean, like back when I was in the University of Chicago, my next door neighbor, Sujin Yi, she was a graduate student in molecular biology and from Korea. So I often checked her English on papers that she was writing. It was very good English. Rarely did I find a mistake. And then later on, we were talking about our scores on the GRE. That's the graduate records exam. It's kind of a souped-up version of the SAT. Anyway, if I recall correctly, I was close to the 90th percentile in verbal ability. The test has 3 components: verbal, math, and logic. And then she was telling me her scores. She got perfect. She on all 3 sections. I thought, man, you should be checking my English. And I felt sad for a while. I didn't tell her that, but I thought my English was good, and yours is better than mine. Or another example, when my brother, younger brother, was wrestling. He was wrestling against Blaine High School, and back then, they went by weight, so you started at the lower, and so the heavyweight was always the last one. And so he had to win to, not only win, he had to pin, I think, because you get more points for that, for us to win. And there was a horrible referee calls, several. In fact, our coach was a Christian guy, I'm not going to mention his name, but he went out with the Bible and started trying to hit the referee. but it was definitely a bad call. And my brother was so depressed, he was going to quit wrestling and just he was bummed out for weeks. On the other hand, when I was at Lockhaven University, the assistant volleyball coach, Gin Kawakita, he was complaining how, like, after the girls' team lost, they'd talk about what they're going to do for a date, and he said they need to be sad. I mean, they weren't as sad. They just, have you noticed that guys take it harder? Like, if you lost a basketball game on a really bad call, you're going to be, like, irritable, right?
Yeah, and then like at the Christian school, they would, the girls would play and the guys would play, and if we both lost, then the guys would always be, we'd all be depressed and stuff, and then the girls would be like, it's fun,
Yeah.
like nothing happened.
Yeah. So that's a negative effect, then. I mean, everybody's going to lose at some point, and so taking it too hard can be a problem. Men feel threatened, or can feel threatened when they're around women who are intellectually either equal or superior. Interesting research I've read is that there's a trend now for people to go back and re-educate, get some marketable job skills, and what you'll see, I'll illustrate it in just a specific example. Again, at Lockhaven, there was a lady, she was a hairdresser actually, and not making a whole lot of money, and she went back to school. Her husband was a truck driver, so her husband made more money. She went back to school and got a nursing degree. And then she started making more money than her husband, and it wasn't immediate, but her husband ended up having an affair with another woman who was a hairdresser and divorced her. And she talked with him, and he just felt like I should be the breadwinner. He felt uncomfortable having his wife make more money. It doesn't make sense to me. I'd be happy if my wife made more money, as long as she didn't flaunt it and and make fun of me or ridicule me. But I don't know, guys, would you be okay if your wife made a lot more money than you did?
Yeah. Same way I'd be.
Yeah. So, but some men are more concerned or will feel more negative about that. Now, women, tend to be judged on their appearance. Here's a little background. In 2008, in the Summer Olympics, China was hosting it, and they conducted a nationwide talent competition because they wanted a little girl to sing, I believe, the national anthem. And they picked this little girl in the box who, like a week before, the Chinese communist officials said, "We can't do this, she's too ugly." And so they got this girl to lip sync. So they put her behind some closed door, and she sang. So the girl who isn't as attractive, she did the singing, but then this one and you can see usually they take this off the internet, but I found another copy. Here it is.
係啊，好有同感啊！嗱，而家見到咧有8個前手水平節起咧，好隆重咁展示國旗。咁呢一個咁可愛嘅小妹妹咧，就喺度唱頌緊歌唱祖國。
So this is also depicted in, let's see. E-L, it's going to boil, B-O-Y-L-E. Yeah, so there's this general assumption if you're a woman and you aren't very attractive, you must not be very talented. This less so with men. That is, well, I mean, what message does it send the little girl who had the teeth? I guess I don't know why they thought maybe it was her teeth, but they made her go hide in some box and sing. I mean, even though she won the national competition. So what does that tell her?
That's my heart.
Yeah. I guess it tells her it doesn't matter how talented you are, if you're not pretty, you're not going anyplace. And you see this, I'm not going to show, I don't have time to show the whole video, but the presumption that this woman must be untalented is...
Game night is our daughter Allie's favorite night. And knowing that her favorite General Mills Big G cereals are gluten-free, like Honey Nut Cheerios, Rice Chex, and Lucky Charms, she can enjoy it her way.
Glasgow's got a great theatre. So far, there's just one thing missing. Talent.
Yes, tensions are high backstage as everyone wonders where the...
Currently unemployed, still looking. And I'm going to sing for you on Britain's Got Talent today.
You're a little nervous.
Yeah, sure I am.
Yeah, well, that's not surprising.
I'm a fighting original woman at the moment with my cat called Pebbles. I'll never be married.
Hi, what's your name, darling?
My name is Susan Boyle.
Okay, Susan, where are you from?
I am from Whiteman near Bathgate, West Lothian.
It's a big town.
It's a sort of collection of... It's a collection of villages. I think, yeah.
And how old are you, Susan?
I am 47. And that's just one side of me.
Okay, what's the dream?
I'm trying to be a professional singer.
And why hasn't it worked out so far, Susan?
I've not been given the chance before, but here's hoping it will change.
Okay, and who would you like to be as successful as?
Elaine Page.
Elaine Page. What are you going to sing tonight?
I'm going to sing I Dreamed a Dream from the Miserables.
Big song.
I dreamed a dream in time gone by.
Without a doubt, that was the biggest surprise I have had in 3 years on the show. When you stood there with that cheeky grin and said, I want to be like Elaine Page, everyone was laughing at you. No one is laughing now. That was stunning, an incredible performance. Amazing. I'm reeling from shock about you two.
I am so thrilled because I know that everybody was against you. I honestly think that we were all being very cynical, and I think that's the biggest wake-up call ever. And I just want to say that it was a complete privilege listening to that. It was
I knew the minute you walked out on that stage that we were going to hear something extraordinary, and I was right. Not a lot of touch. Susan, you are...
And it goes on, but the sad thing is, why is it so shocking that she can sing well? I mean, they don't say it, but why? I mean, why did they think she would be a bad singer? Because of her looks, yeah. I mean, there's no... And this is less of an issue with men. That is, we don't just automatically assume if a guy is overweight or doesn't look good that he couldn't be a good singer, but you see that with women. So, yeah, it's an unfortunate reality. Now, celebrity images tend to be photoshopped. There's kickback against this. Actually, what's that song? There's a song criticizing photoshopping and so on. All about that bass.
Oh.
Yeah, yeah. And and so celebrities are sometimes pushing to have the real person. And we're not talking about makeup when they're literally transforming the image to make it something that it wasn't actually. And so nowadays with you used to have to use Face or Photoshop, but now there are various online tools that really simply can do these sorts of fixes. Now, role conflict and role strain, because men are socialized to not help out much with chores, women tend to get stuck with a lot of it, and even when they're working full time. I mean, how many of you had parents who both had jobs? when growing up. What percent of the housework did your dad do, would you say? Like none? Yeah.
My dad did most of the housework.
Oh, he did. So that's So men are expected to be successful at work and also devote time to their wife and children, and this can be lead to some frustrations. And when the wife works, especially if she's making more money than her husband, some men consider that a challenge to their masculinity. Now, discrimination, women are hurt by sexism. It's a set of beliefs, norms, and values to justify sexual inequality. In the job market, they've made gains, but there's still, for example, one question that really is inappropriate is to ask a candidate is, what are your family plans? I mean, they're basically hinting, if we hire you, you're not just going to go have a baby and take time off work, are you? And so that's it'd be negative consequence. Women are concentrated in pink-collar jobs like secretaries, court clerks, stenographers, elementary school teachers, etc. And so, and there's no reason for that. But I mean, thinking back when you were in the first grade, did any of you have a male teacher for first or second grade? No. So women are often marginalized in the job market, and there's no reason, say, like, why can't men be nurses? And there are men who are nurses, but there are much fewer. Is anyone a nursing major here? No. But I wonder, are there many men in the program?
No, but they get paid more. They're more likely to get chosen.
Right.
One of my best friends is going to the nursing program. He's a dude.
Yeah. They actually want guys to become nurses so they get paid a little more and they'll have a higher chance of getting a job.
Yeah. And it's a negative because there can be cruel comments. Like, I remember about 5 years ago when I first here, I was talking to the automotive instructor. They had a few women who were studying auto mechanics, and then people said they were lesbian or something, and which wasn't true, but because they figured, like, no woman in her right mind would want to do auto mechanics. I mean, that of course is negative. Now, women tend to be underpaid, and even when you look at initial placement right out of university, whatever the level of education, they tend to make less money, even doing the same kinds of jobs. Now, some of this can be explained by the fact that women will take time out of the workforce to have children, but even considering that, it's not, you can't explain it all away as fair and legitimate. Now, poverty hits women hard because in our country, women who are receiving child support from their ex-spouse are supposed to be getting it in the mail or direct deposit, and so it's up to the guy to man up and actually provide that. But there's a big problem where men don't pay their child support consistently, and there's efforts to try to fight that, but it still leaves women in a bad situation because they tend to get the children. If the kids are younger in a divorce scenario, usually women get primary custody. And like I said, in other countries, it's the government who pays the child support and bills the dad, so there's never any lack. There's also sexism in sports. Men have had more opportunities. I think Title V in the 70s tried to address that, a law that that give women more opportunities in sports, but even when it's equal, ideally in a university or high school there should be the same number of sports available for men and women, and but those who are pursuing scholarships are fewer. Men are more into sports. As your text points out, legally there are laws that are biased against women. For example, overwhelmingly, the enforcement of prostitution laws is aimed at arresting the woman who's providing the service and not the man who's soliciting. Now, of course, the tricky thing is in a reverse sting, basically to arrest a guy soliciting a prostitute, ordinarily they have a female police officer go undercover and pretend to be a prostitute, and then once the deal is made, then you rush in and arrest them. Now, politically, women are fewer in Congress and hold fewer political offices, and seldom rise to positions of power and influence. So why don't things change? For one thing, men don't see any reason really to change things. It would be costly to give up their power, and then some women resist giving up some advantages they see for themselves in the current gender arrangement. So, for example, in Israel, all women who are physically healthy must serve in the military, I believe, for 2 years. And I don't know, if we had a draft, should women be subject to it? What do you think?
I think so.
You think so?
Yeah.
Yeah, make it equal. And so, feminism is a movement aimed at achieving gender inequality, and gosh, we're coming down on time. I won't have time to show this video, but there's a video, if you Google Ali G feminism, he actually interviews a prominent feminist. It's comedy and parody, but there's you get a lot of, I mean, he basically says things like, if women are so good at making food, then how come all the top chefs are men? I mean, he's basically trolling her, but it's an interesting video. But feminism is where women are aiming to make things fair and equal, and pushing for this. So where do we see things going? You don't need to know all these results here, but I think that you're going to see. My guess is women are going to be given more rights, and hopefully this problem will be reduced. All right, I'm going to show. Actually, I'll show you this. We have about 5 minutes here. This is, let's see, Ali G feminism.
Check this out, yo. I is here with my main woman, Naomi Wolf. She be well important feminist and has like written enough books about that kind of stuff. Do you think that women should have equal rights in the workplace?
Yeah, do you?
Well, ain't there the problem that if they start getting them there, then they're going to start asking for them at home?
Yeah, and what's wrong with that? Research has shown, this is my favorite statistic in misconceptions, that the most erotic thing a man can do for a woman is the dishes, is housework.
Is do the dishes?
Well, after she's had a
I
child.
thought it was the figure of eight. The figure of eight when you...
Well, that's good before,
That is
yeah. Okay, well, that's good.
All right then, no offense, but if you were so equal, how come even the things that you claim that you was better at men, at like cooking, you know, you ain't.
Well, who says women are better at cooking?
All the best chefs in the world is like men, like, you know, Colonel Sanders, man or woman, Ronald McDonald. Them is like a million times better than Wendy.
Yes, a very good question. I mean, I guess I have to say I never claimed that women are better cooks than men. You're right. The great chefs have all been men.
Do you reckon now that women has got more job opportunities than men?
No, I do not.
Because, you know, you've got all the lap dancers, all the bitch, the woman in the rap videos, whatever, strippers, you know.
A lot of countries in Eastern Europe are collapsing, and women like me, you know, have to sell sex in order to eat, you know, in order to look after their children. And
But
there's nothing sadder.
if you did, you would make loads. I'm not saying I would never have to.
Well, thank you for the compliment. I appreciate that because I'm almost 40, so that's nice that, you know, I could possibly take to the streets if I needed to. But let me tell you honestly, how would you feel if you had to sell sex, your sex?
What if people pay me money for sex?
No, honestly, I mean, I meant like,
I would be there every day. I would be laying in office 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 369.
I mean, would you call a woman a bitch? Would you say you're my bitch and expect her to feel really cared for and respected?
Well, with me, Julie, I've got a girlfriend, and I do sometimes call her my bitch, but, you know, in the bedroom, whatever, you know, that is, them words come out, and, you know, she ain't got a problem with it.
Okay. Gee, I'm kind of speechless.
I ain't calling her a bitch, I was calling my
bitch. I'm sorry. Okay, my bitch. Okay, you know, I guess we're just really speaking at cross purposes because I'm so offended by this, I can't even tell you.
Anyway, has anyone seen any of Ali G's videos? It's sort of funny because he interviews people that are intellectual, you know, prominent people, and like he interviewed an astronaut and asked him if he thinks we'll ever go to the sun, and And then and the astronaut said, absolutely not, it's far too hot. And then he said, well, what if we went when it was winter? So he's got a ton of these. This, by the way, is, for those of you who don't know, what's it, Sacha Baron Cohen? I forget. He's done some other videos. Anyway, so we're going to go ahead and wrap it up there so we have time to review for the quiz. So I'm going to review now for the quiz. First off, you need to know that gender refers to the social expectations for how we act and behave, either masculine or feminine. It does not refer to the anatomy. So that's a difference in terms of everyday use. If some random person walked up to you on the street and said, what's your gender, you would assume they're asking male or female, but in this sense, it's the expectations. Sex-determined behavior and role-determined behavior. I didn't talk too much about this. There are some sex-determined behaviors. For example, breastfeeding. No matter how feminine a man feels, he is not able to do that, right? And then, so that's sex-determined. But gender role behaviors would be something like, say, taking care of the kids. Say women primarily do that. There's nothing to say that men couldn't take up that job. And so the difference here is a sex-determined behavior is something that only men or women can do. Gender socialization is the process where you learn your gender. It has nothing to do with being gregarious or flirtatious at all. Feminism is a movement to get equal political and social rights for women. All right, gender socialization and men. I said that men are socialized often to kind of be tough guys and put off seeing the doctor, and this can be negative because, what would be the? I remember my brother. He used to be a commercial fisherman. Now he runs tours and has other businesses. But when he was up in Alaska fishing, he got jellied. I'm not a fisherman, but apparently, if you get bit by a jellyfish on one side of your hand, it can lead to a staph infection. So they were killing it, catching a lot of fish, and he got a staph infection, and he just. They have like a 4-day they can fish, so it's really important they get all the salmon they can and stuff. But anyway, he prolonged, and when he went to the hospital later, they almost had to amputate his arm. They had to put him on an IV, and they said, what kind of a idiot? But they said, why would you do this? Prolong, and so this is a negative aspect of gender, that women are more likely to go to the doctor, and married men live longer because if their wives often encourage them to go to the doctor, whereas single men, one of the biggest killers of men is colon cancer. And not to be gross at all, but one of the initial signs is blood in the stools. And Katie Couric, the news lady, her husband died of that because he put off. He said, I'm too busy to go to the doctor. And then the cancer spread and it was untreatable. And so this is a negative aspect of gender for men. All right, I'm going to go ahead and pass out the quiz, and when you're done, you can bring it up, and we'll see you guys back on Thursday. Yeah. All right. Is Luis Germain here? No. Okay, I want to make sure my attendance is right. Okay, so.